Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Podcast number 8. I'm Darren. He's Larry. How you doing, Larry?
Doing good, Darren. Looking forward to episode 8. Lots to cover again in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League and UFF Sports platform. It's been an exciting couple weeks since we talked last, obviously with the NHL Stanley Cup final and UFHL Klein Cup final playoffs coming to conclusion. And now we're almost in next season mode, but it's been an exciting run here over the last couple weeks.
It's been a busy couple weeks. I watched the Tampa Bay Lightning win the Stanley Cup, and I was so happy because I actually got something right for once. I called it in 6, man. I called it in 6. And I was thinking, yes, I haven't been right for about 4 weeks, so I actually got something correct. I was pretty proud of myself. I was so happy, Larry, I climbed a mountain.
I seen that. That was awesome. And I was going to say, because I finished ahead of you in the UFHL NHL playoff pool, so there was going to be a little bit of a side bet there as to what Darren has to do. But seeing you climb that mountain, I think you've already done your part. You made up the decision for me, so congratulations on that. We won't put you through any more torment.
Yeah, I'm still in my Grizzly Adams mode here with the beard, vacation mountain climbing mode, and I got my hat. So I got my merch, my UFFS merch. Got the sweater I had before, so I'm a happy guy. And I'm very, very well. I shouted it from the mountaintop because I knew what was going to happen, and it did happen. And Ashley Murray, of course, from Regina, owner of the Monarchs, won the first ever Klein Cup, and the stuff she's getting, Larry, unbelievable. She's getting the Klein Cup. Did you see that ring?
Yeah, the ring is fantastic. The Klein Cup, big thanks to the Klein Saucer, the 3 Klein Saucer founders who donated the cup, and it's a real replica. I mean, it doesn't look exactly like the Stanley Cup because it's the Klein Cup. It's our own spin on it, but it's a good, 3-4 foot tall trophy. It'll be fully engraved with the Monarchs roster, and Ashley Murray is the owner, and her staff names will be on there. So it's exciting to see that trophy and the Klein Cup, and certainly the ring's sharp looking, and there's hats and everything else, merch that can go with Klein Cup champs, much like the Tampa Bay Lightning. So she's getting a lot from her playoff run, which, like we said, she really cleaned up across the board this year. The stars aligned for the Monarchs just as they did the Tampa Bay Lightning. So and those two kind of go hand in hand. When you look at the Monarchs roster, they had 9 skaters from the Tampa Bay Lightning. So the Monarchs were going to go as far as Tampa could take them, and Tampa took them all the way. So congratulations to Ashley Murray and the Monarchs.
Way to go, Ashley. That was phenomenal. The run you had right from the get-go, you loaded up on Tampa Bay in your draft. You had a lot of Tampa Bay Lightning players. If this would have been last year, it would be a whole different story, but it worked out. And yeah, like you said, she cleaned up. She took the Klein Cup, the first ever. She won the UFHL NHL playoff pool, and then she got the Conn Smythe as well. Like, so you know what they call that in horse racing, right? That's the Triple Crown. It's very rare. I'd like to see if this is ever going to happen again.
It is. It was rare, and I mean the Conn Smythe winner even was up for debate, right? Victor Hedman ended up winning the Conn Smythe, who was an original player for Ashley's franchise, the Monarchs. He's on their roster year-round, and she has Nikita Kucherov as well. So we're kind of top forward, top defenseman, Kucherov and Hedman. We're already Monarchs heading into the playoffs, but she picked Braden Point in the first round of the playoff draft. And if I had a vote on the Conn Smythe winner, I think I was leaning Braden Point. Just the amount of overtime goals, game-winning goals, first goals, the impact he had for the Tampa Bay Lightning throughout the playoffs. I might have went Braden Point, so she might have had to concede that $5 or free trade that she got for the Conn Smythe winner. She might have had to concede that to the Red Army franchise because they loaned her Braden Point as her first-round pick. But nonetheless, Victor Hedman got the vote for the Conn Smythe winner. So she, like I said, Triple Crown. She cleaned up on everything. And you look at the UFHL NHL playoff pool, and Ashley was actually trailing. I believe she was in 5th place heading into the final round. But there's 23 entrants, and Ashley was the only one who, prior to the playoffs, correctly predicted both the Stanley Cup champion, Tampa Bay Lightning, as well as the Klein Cup champion, her Monarchs. So the fact she had Tampa and Monarchs going into the final and Tampa prevailed, the bonus points from having those champions picked prior to playoffs is what put her over the top and took her to the top of those standings, like you said, to complete that triple crown on top of winning the Klein Cup on the strength of 15 of her own players on that 23-man playoff roster. And so definitely, like I said, the stars aligned this year for the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Monarchs. And as we know, there's a really cool tie-in there. Ashley Murray is the daughter-in-law of Al Murray, who is the assistant general manager and director of amateur scouting for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He was responsible for a large portion of that Tampa Bay Lightning roster. And congratulations to Al Murray, who got his first ever Stanley Cup ring to go with World Junior gold medals and some of his other accolades. So certainly a big celebration in the Murray family over the past week or so, with Tampa Bay winning as well as the Monarchs.
Absolutely. There was some champagne shared in that household, I would think. She said there were some tears, I think, not from Al. She was very adamant to point that out, but I think from her mother-in-law, I think. So yeah, well done. She took home some prize money too. So, and this is what's cool about the UFHL, and what's very special about our league, Larry, and you know this, but how she was able to grab some other players in the playoff draft to add to her roster to take her into the Klein Cup playoff run. And in that, not only did she take home some prize money, I think, $390, USD equivalent, as part of the 50% of the playoff pool, but another $255 for her 15 players. But then that gets spread around, which I think is really, really cool. And it's like we said before, we've said it in other podcasts, even though you're not in it, you're still in it, right? And we have a selection of other franchises that had players on that roster.
Yeah, certainly. Her first and second round picks in the playoff draft really propelled her to victory as well. Again, she had a strong core of her own players, including, 5 Tampa Bay Lightning forwards plus Victor Hedman. So she was in a good position of power heading into that draft if Tampa went far. But she started off the playoff draft getting Braden Point in the first round, 7th overall from the Red Army. She came back in the second round and got Miro Heiskanen from the Bombers, who was obviously a potential Conn Smythe candidate if Dallas had won the Stanley Cup. But he was a real breakout star in these playoffs, so great on Ashley to get him in the second round. And then you look down a little ways in the fourth round, she got Tyler Johnson from the Royals. She also had Travis Sanheim from Chilean Seabass, Mitchell Stevens from the Vengeance, and Jason Demers from Elite Assassins. So plus 2 of them were free agents from the free agent pool, but 6 of her 8 loaners that she picked up through the playoff draft, each won $17 equivalent USD as kind of a little, just a little small portion of the purse to congratulate those franchises. And again, it keeps the interest going for the franchises that didn't make the playoffs. They still had players involved in the Klein Cup playoffs, and those 8 players, in addition to her 15 normal roster players, put the Monarchs over the top, and they each received $17 USD for their original franchise. So certainly a cool playoff system. And the reason she drafted those 8 players is because she had 8 empty roster spots because 8 of her players from the regular season did not make the NHL playoffs. So she was upgrading or replacing those 8 players. And really, again, to see a guy like Braden Point and Miro Heiskanen and just the team she picked for the playoffs, she deserved it. She earned it with both her performance in the playoff draft as well as her core group of Tampa guys that if Tampa's going to lift the Stanley Cup every year, the Monarchs are going to have a good chance of lifting the Klein Cup and potentially repeating.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And, $17, it's like I always say, it's better than a kick in the pants, right? But, you take that this year being the very first year, the building year. I mean, not a lot of spend because it was really just a development out of the get-go. A few franchise sales is essentially what amounted to the prize money. But you take that into another year and you've got a player in there, you maybe times that by 10, right? So, or whatever. The prize pools are bigger. We already know that. So, it's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, you'll be able to add a 0, I think, next year for those roster players. So, yeah, if it goes from 17 to 170, I think those franchises will be that much more interested in how it's playing out in the Klein Cup playoffs in 2021. So, but a good initial inaugural season for the UFHL, having to endure the COVID with the shortened regular season and then to come back with the Klein Cup playoffs the way it was, and to have a real good, exciting Klein Cup final with Strong Island, who has new ownership. Terry Weber has taken over that franchise, purchased that franchise during the Klein Cup playoffs, and certainly to see the fact that franchise was backstopped by Anton Khudobin and had Corey Perry as one of their roster players. He scored a big overtime goal in the Stanley Cup final, and it was interesting. It was kind of the Tampa versus Dallas matchup within the Klein Cup final as well. So Strong Island was heavy on Dallas players, and obviously Monarchs were loaded with Tampa Bay Lightning players. So it was a fun final. I think the final two franchises had something like 9-8 or 9-7 were the amount of players left on each franchise, which might not be like that every year depending how the playoffs, NHL playoff results go. But for a first trial run for the Klein Cup playoffs, it couldn't have went any better as far as the matchup we seen at the end, and it was cool to follow along.
Yeah, Strong Island had a great run, and welcome, Terry. Good to have Terry as part of the ownership team. This is it's going to be a lot of fun, and well, I guess better luck next year, as they always say. So way to go, Ashley. Totally cleaned house, and as we mentioned, she won the UFHL NHL playoff pool. And Larry, you know what? She even beat you, the pro. You were close, though.
She did. I was the runner-up, I guess you could say. But in that pool, as well as in the Klein Cup playoffs, if you're not first, you're last, right? So there was only one payout in the UFHL NHL playoff pool, and I wasn't eligible for it. But congrats to Ashley for her come-from-behind victory. Like I said, she was propelled to the top thanks to the bonus points for correctly predicting Tampa Bay as the Stanley Cup champion and Monarchs as the Klein Cup champion. But yeah, I may have finished a few spots higher than Darren, but at the end of the day, I didn't come out any further ahead. So if you're not first, you're last, and I was a fellow loser.
Yeah, you kicked the crap out of me, I'll admit it. I think I ended up 19th or 20th, but at least I wasn't last. I got pretty cocky off the start there because I was ahead after the first round, but yeah, I made some bad choices. I think based on my choices on logo design and the UFHL and stuff like that. I didn't know the rosters that well, but I did what I could, but at least I wasn't last.
Yeah, no, lots of fun. And my one regret was kind of changing on the fly as we were making our pro versus rookie picks or our projections going into the playoffs. I took my Stanley Cup final was going to be Pittsburgh over Edmonton. And I went back and I knew I had said Tampa Bay, Vegas somewhere, and I couldn't remember where I said that. And it was on a previous podcast with R.L. Breyer. I said, I think this is Tampa's year. So if I would have stuck with my gut on that one, I would have squeaked out a win over Ashley. But nonetheless, Ashley's picks, like I said, the stars aligned this year for Ashley to sweep everything that was available. Went to Ashley, triple crown, like you said, for the Klein Cup playoffs and the UFHL NHL playoff pool. I
should have known better. Tampa Bay, they kind of, they had egg on their face after last year. So I should have known better, knowing they would come back and finish off the way they did. I don't know. For some reason, I thought St. Louis would repeat, but obviously I was wrong. So, yeah, that was a lot of fun. That playoff pool gave me something to kind of watch, and I lost a little bit of interest when I knew I was down in almost at last place. But it's those kind of things are just little extras that are really nice to add to this whole thing, right? A little extra spending score coin for those that are involved, or those that win, I guess. In this case, it's Ashley. But other than that, we've had a lot of trades going on. I mean, I follow Twitter. It's one of the social media platforms that I follow. And every time I open it up, there's a trade alert. There's been a lot of stuff going on, Larry. And I know that you have some faves that you've kind of earmarked as what you would see as your top 5, trades, I guess, over the last little while.
Yeah, we've seen a number of blockbusters. So the way we did it is we opened up trading much like the NHL does. You couldn't trade any players that were still involved in the NHL playoffs, but as we saw in the NHL, Kasperi Kapanen and other guys were getting moved during the NHL playoffs this year, which is rare for a normal year. But as soon as the Kasperi Kapanen trade happened, I believe it was August 28th, we opened up trading within the UFHL with players not involved in the NHL playoffs. And we've seen a big wave throughout the playoffs. And then we had some blockbusters since the playoffs have concluded as well. So when I look at the top 5 trades, one that happened fairly early on in the playoffs, but had to be kept under wraps until Tampa Bay won the championship because he was still involved in the playoffs, was the guy we mentioned as a potential Conn Smythe winner, Braden Point. Braden Point and a second-round pick were traded for the second overall pick, and Jeff Carter. That was Outlaws acquired Braden Point from Red Army, and Red Army is loading up for the upcoming entry auction. They have the majority of the top 10 picks they've acquired, and they're gunning for Alexis Lafreniere and then the rest of that 2020 NHL draft class that we'll be auctioning off on Saturday, October 17th. So that was one of the first big moves for Red Army to get into that top 5 and into that position of power to control that draft a bit. But certainly Braden Point, established NHL star on his way to the Outlaws. So that was an exciting trade. Red Army has been busy, and the next trade that was more of a hockey trade that really stood out to me was Red Army sent Artemi Panarin and Thomas Nosek to the Yetis in exchange for Adam Fox, Ilya Samsonov, Brendan Smith, and a first-round pick that amounted to 23rd overall. So just a really cool hockey trade there. Artemi Panarin's a big ticket. He was a Hart Trophy finalist, contender, a guy who puts up a ton of points. Adam Fox, a young defenseman. Ilya Samsonov, young goalie. Some good building blocks there for Red Army. And then if I go to trade number 3, I had the West Coast Express made a big move to land Aaron Ekblad and Kevin Labanc from the North Stars in exchange for Dylan Strome, Nick Leddy, Sasha Chmielewski, Brinson Pasichnak, David Ferentz, and a second-round pick at 43rd overall. So another blockbuster there, and it's a cool one because Aaron Ekblad is rumored to be on the trading block in the NHL right now as well. So we'll see if the North Stars got a better return than the Florida Panthers will potentially. A trade that happened right after the playoffs, a real signature move for Strong Island as kind of their first big blockbuster and taking over ownership for Terry Weber. Strong Island acquired Rasmus Dahlin from the Royals for Jacob Markstrom, Ryan Pulak, and the 61st overall pick at the end of the second round. So another big blockbuster trade there that was just, when you look at the pieces involved, it's cool to see how realistic that is. Rasmus Dahlin for Jacob Markstrom, Ryan Pulak, and a second round pick, if that would entice the Buffalo Sabres to give up Rasmus Dahlin or not. But certainly a nice looking trade there. And then there was, I guess, the real blockbuster, which is more of your fantasy blockbuster, was the Murder Hornets acquired Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Jake Gensel, and Tyler Johnson from the Outlaws in exchange for Steven Stamkos, Nicholas Backstrom, and Oliver Shillington. So a 6-player blockbuster, including 4 big names. And again, Oliver Ekman-Larsson's one of those names that's out there on the NHL trade block right now. So we're seeing some of these guys that are going to potentially move in the coming days, coming weeks in the NHL have already moved in the UFHL, and it'll be cool to kind of see how those returns compare, if what the Arizona Coyotes will get for Oliver Ekman-Larsson as well. But those are the 5 blockbuster trades that stand out to me since August 28th in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League.
Yeah, pretty amazing. And I don't, I've never been a scout, not, I've played some office pool stuff, never fantasy stuff. But to get involved in this trade stuff and then to decide if you're going to give up a pick like 23rd overall and the 61st overall, that stuff, I can't bring any connection to that, or that could be huge, really, or it might not be a big deal. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it gives them another dart or another chance to bid at the upcoming entry auction, where they're going to add a prospect from the 2020 NHL draft. We'll be auctioning off all the first and second round NHL draft picks from which is coming up on Tuesday, Wednesday, the NHL draft. And then the following weekend, we skip Thanksgiving, Canadian Thanksgiving weekend. We're doing our entry auction on Saturday, October 17th. And then the next day, we're doing a draft for the scouts to kind of have their pick of the litter from the 3rd to 7th round picks from the 2020 NHL draft. So certainly you can never have enough prospects, and then they're trade chips too for the future, right? You purchase a prospect and you can add him into your next deal to get a current player if you don't want to wait on him to develop on your protected list. But it is cool to see a lot of the deals with somewhat similar to the real world, what we could see coming out in the coming weeks, but also some very much fantasy blockbusters in there too, which the big thing you have to remember in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League is the salary cap, and that's one of the real implications of any trade, because the UFHL mimics the NHL salary cap, both the ceiling and the floor. And somebody takes on a guy like Artemi Panarin, the Yetis already have Connor McDavid and Mitch Marner as big ticket guys. And you can imagine when you got 3 guys over that $11 million and you got to fit 20 more guys in under $81.5 million, and you got 36 or so tied up in those 3 guys, it's a challenge. So the salary cap's a big challenge, and just negotiating your way around that, both through trades. So when you're making trades, you always need to have the salary cap in the back of your mind, and it'll be interesting to see how some of these franchises build around these big ticket, big blockbuster trade additions, and how they work them into their salary cap structure going forward.
It's going to be interesting. You know, I like I said, I follow Twitter. It's one of my social media platforms that I follow the most of everything. And I saw that the Outlaws were fairly busy. Red Army, no question. Luke, he was doing his thing as he always does. And the North Stars were pretty, Cameron from the North Stars and his team were pretty busy as well. But you know what I really like to see, which was cool, is when one of these franchises did a trade and they welcomed some players into their fold, they put together quite the mural or the collage, you know, and did some artwork and did some pretty cool stuff. It's pretty neat to see. So you can see the passion, because there's a lot of passion that goes behind this stuff and a lot of thought goes into it, just as you were pointing out right now. And to me, it's a real learning experience for a guy that has never been that in depth into hockey other than watch and try and predict who wins. And basically that was the extent of it for me. So this is pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff.
It is cool. And like I said, to see the amount of work and the amount of effort that these franchise owners as well as general managers are putting into promoting their brand on social media, welcoming players into the fold. Xavier Smith, the general manager of Elite Assassins, has been doing a great job of promoting all their moves. They're acquiring prospects, purchasing prospects from scouts. They're involved in the trade market. And he's always including little write-ups on every player that they acquire. And it's garnering a following. It's getting interest. Adam Stevens, the general manager for the Outlaws, he's a real good graphic design guy. He's always got the cool graphics going for any players that are coming to the Outlaws, or any players the Outlaws are putting on the trade block. He puts out a really neat eye-catching graphic that probably gets them an extra offer or two on those guys on the trade block. So a lot of effort, a lot of time being spent marketing their franchise and building their brand, which is great to see.
It's really cool. The passion's there, and it's exciting. It's hard to follow. There's so much going on. But I did see there's even a new logo from Arnie with the pipeline prospects. That was a pretty cool idea, pretty innovative. I like that. Helping the old Western Canadian oil industry.
Yeah, Arnie Pipeline Prospects is his scouting firm or scouting agency, and he's loaded up. He's probably the leader for the most players in his prospect pipeline, as you can say. So it's a great name, Pipeline Prospects. We had another brand updating. Some of the franchises had an original brand, and then they've sort of rebranded or put more effort into their logo and their appearance and their image. And Duckman's Domination came out with a new brand just today, Dean Millard, and it's a real sharp-looking logo, great-looking jerseys. It's definitely raised the bar from where they were at originally. So, and Rock Republic is another one that did an overhaul of their branding and are working on some new jerseys and stuff. So people are taking this seriously. The merch, the online store isn't far away from going public, and these franchises, not only will they be marketing and introducing their players on social media, soon they'll be advertising their own merch, and they get a large portion. I believe 80% of all merchandise sales go back to the franchise. So certainly they'll have some exciting things to do besides just managing their fantasy hockey roster when it comes to merchandise and all the rest and social media. So they're going to stay busy, and there is a lot of cool things outside of just the fantasy gameplay, which is the big picture with UFF Sports. It's a small business. It's not just a fantasy platform.
Yeah, for anyone that hasn't checked out the merch store, check it out. I know Tony did a lot of work in setting that thing up, and there's a lot of stickers on there. There's some pretty cool jackets. My wife was looking at that, and she was just salivating at some of those, zipper jackets and deciding, what she was going to go with. She obviously wants to go with the UFFS brand for now, but until she kind of gets her head around who she might want to follow or cheer for on the franchise front. But yeah, I love to see these designs come across, like Dean Millard's. I saw that one too. Looks a little nastier now, obviously, with some little blood and stitches on the duck. But that's what hockey's all about, in my opinion. So I do like it. So please check out the merch store. And Justin Davis, he was giving me a hard time saying, Darren Bates says, I'm going to send him a T-shirt. So I said, you know what? If you would have given me one of your stickers, I would have had it on top of the mountain, just right over top of UFFS. So you never know, right? You never know where it's going to end up.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it is cool to see the UFFS sticker on the top of the mountain. We've seen Jason Hofer has been plastering Elite Assassins stickers. I think he's almost hit every province in Canada. I don't know if he's made it up to the territories yet, but he's leaving the Elite Assassins brand coast to coast. So it's great to see UFFS getting recognized across Canada and across the world. As we've said, we have some international representation. We have Jeff Ray, who runs a scouting agency, Alpine Prospects, out of sort of France, Switzerland area, that region of Europe. We have Juha, who has the Snipers franchise. He's franchise owner for the Snipers based in Finland. So there's some good representation, and the word is spreading. The interest is picking up, certainly in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, but UFF Sports in general.
Yeah, so Jason might be a little bit more brave than I am. I can guarantee, Larry, that there's definitely some UFFS stickers on a few places on my trip to Alberta, mostly washrooms. They are there. I didn't take pictures because I'm a little more under the radar. And, some of them were in national parks, which I'm not sure, probably breaking the law. I'm sure of that in some fashion. And I don't know how long they'll last, but they are there. I just didn't know if I wanted to share a picture on social media. But yeah, I spread them around. I did my part. And I can thank Jason for that idea, because I saw what he was doing earlier. So that's where I got the idea from. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, actually. So let's talk about important dates and events coming up in the UFHL, because we got a couple real big ones that people should be paying attention to. And this is what I want to ask you, because we know that there's the entry-level auction and the entry-level draft is coming up here in the NHL. And Larry, as a scout, because I know you've got a lot of experience in this stuff, if I'm a franchise owner, what should I do to prepare for who I should be focusing on or picking? How should I do this? What should I look at?
Yeah, so a lot of franchise owners have already hired their own scouts. So a lot of them have scouts working underneath them or have partnered with scouts. Certainly the scouts follow the draft and the draft eligible prospects year round, a lot closer than maybe the average franchise owner or fantasy GM. But certainly getting your own scouts a nice angle. But if not, failing that, I mean, you want to tune into the NHL draft, which is Tuesday evening and Wednesday throughout the day. That's where 217, or I guess this year, 216 prospects will be drafted into the NHL. And then a little over a week later, 64 will be auctioned into the UFHL. The first and second round picks, or 62 rather. And then rounds 3 to 7 were the real sleepers and the steals. Braden Point was a third round pick. Those guys are going to be available just to the scouts on that second day event on October 18th. So it'll be really neat to see who franchises target. And certainly as a UFHL franchise, you want to be very aware of the scoring system and the scoring categories as well in the league that you're playing in, and which prospects, they may go in a different order in the NHL draft, but which prospects do you want to target that are going to best represent your franchise and contribute to those specific scoring categories and the scoring system within the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. So that's something you always have to be aware of, but certainly tune into the NHL draft on Tuesday, Wednesday. You'll get all the information you want there. And in the meantime, you can do as much prep as you want, because myself, this is Christmas Eve for me. I put out my 7-round mock draft where I predicted all 216 picks. I put out my top 500 rankings, which is twice as many prospects of the 216 that'll be drafted. I went to the top 500. And if you look around the UFHL scouting community, Ruby ISS, which is Harrison Miller, and Gur Doltak, who has a scouting agency, Doltak Scouting Services, DSS, in the UFHL platform. He actually is partnered with Ruby ISS in the real world, and they do a lot of scouting at both the WHL level as well as globally. They have their rankings and their mock drafts out. Craig Button, who is a big name in the hockey world, former NHL GM, Stanley Cup champion in Dallas, big name on TSN. He's their scouting director, but obviously he has Craig's List, which is his personal rankings going into the draft. And he did a mock draft on TSN too. So you can kind of compare and contrast Craig Button's mock draft to my mock draft. And if you search NHL mock draft right now in Twitter or even in Google, the amount of information will be overwhelming because there's hundreds, if not thousands of people that participate in predicting how this draft is going to go. So a lot of excitement between now and Tuesday evening when those picks are announced in the NHL virtual draft for this year's NHL entry draft, because they can't do it in person. But it's going to be exciting Tuesday night. And anybody who's put together rankings or mock drafts, like I said, this is Christmas Eve for us. This is a whole year's worth of work coming down to a day or two here to see how it's going to play out.
And I did have a look at yours, Larry. In fact, I even wrote down the top 10 just to see, maybe we'll have to even have a wager on that to see if that's probably other than maybe the odd surprise, probably everybody has the same top 10. Or how different can it be, do you think, in the top 10?
Yeah, it can be different, and some years more so than others, and this year is one of those years. I think generally speaking, the top three are pretty consensus. The names: Alexis Lafreniere's 99.9% going to be a New York Ranger. And then second, third overall, which is the Los Angeles Kings and Ottawa Senators, are going to either take Quinton Byfield or Tim Stützle, German forward. Those two are going to go probably 2-3, one way or the other, whether Byfield goes 2 and Stützle 3 or vice versa. But then the draft really starts at 4 with the Detroit Red Wings. And you don't have to look any further than last year. Detroit picked 6th overall and took German defenseman Moritz Seider. Well, not many people, myself included, had Seider in the top 10. He was kind of around that 10 to 15 range, and some, 10 to 20 range, depending which mock draft you were looking at. So that was one of those, wow, people thought they really reached for Moritz Seider. So the Red Wings definitely march to their own beat, and they have their own list to go off. And that's where the draft unofficially starts, I think, is at 4th overall. And then 4th to 15th is going to be very interesting, especially some teams might draft by position and reach for defenseman. A guy like a Braden Schneider from the Brandon Wheat Kings could go higher than people expect, or Caden Gooley from the Prince Albert Raiders. They're kind of ranked in that 15 to 25, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were closer to the top 10. So it'll be interesting. There sort of is a general consensus, top 10, top 12. I kind of have it tiered from 1 to 12. I have sort of a set group that I didn't waver on from June till October. I didn't make any changes in my top 12. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if a few names crept in there as far as the mock draft and certainly the actual NHL draft. As teams watch the Stanley Cup playoffs, they've seen how important Victor Hedman, your Conn Smythe winner, Miro Heiskanen, who probably would have been the Conn Smythe winner for Dallas, Cale Makar, what he did for Colorado. The defensemen were a big story in the playoffs, and as well as goaltenders. Both the Stanley Cup finalist goaltenders were Russian, Anton Khudobin, and obviously the champion, Andrei Vasilevsky. Well, there's a Russian goaltender who's off to a hot start in Russia, Yaroslav Askarov, who gets the Carey Price comparison. He could be one of those guys that, wow, he goes 4th overall to Detroit, or 5th overall to Ottawa. So look out for the Russian goaltender, and just be aware that the defenseman could go higher than the general public has them ranked, because they log a lot of minutes and they had big roles in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And that top pairing defenseman, if NHL teams believe those guys are top pairing potential, I think we could see a run of defensemen in that 10 to 15 range, which bumps back a lot of the forwards people have ranked a little bit higher on the consolidated rankings.
Interesting. So you say hundreds, if not thousands, of mock drafts. all over the place if you Google it. So I guess basically you just align yourself with someone you trust, like yourself, maybe Craig Button, and listen to Dean Millard's podcast. He's always got Craig on there. They're tracking the draft. A lot of good information. They talk about different players and what makes them special, different attributes that people look at. So that's always interesting stuff too, right?
Yeah, that podcast, Tracking the Draft, it only started in June, but they covered basically all the top 20 prospects, and great insight there from Craig Button, who really tells it like it is. He doesn't sugarcoat much. If he doesn't love a prospect for one reason or another, he's not afraid to point out flaws as well as their strong traits. So very, again, you can tell he's been in the NHL game. He's a very pro guy, and the way he approaches that, and it's very interesting to consume that knowledge that he has, and for aspiring scouts like myself to take it all in and see the way he sees these prospects. So it's a great podcast, Tracking the Draft, and like I said, same thing. You can put an NHL draft podcast, and you'll get 100 results as well. There's a large percentage of hockey fans. The hockey world are scouts at heart and real draft junkies. And I'm sure a lot of our UFHL franchise owners, general managers, and certainly the scouts enjoy the prospects and the futures as much as they do their current players. So I do think there's going to be a lot of interest in the next 48 hours leading up to the NHL draft, and certainly the 11 days after that leading up to the UFHL entry auction on Saturday, October 17th, which should be a real fun event for everybody involved in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League.
Sounds like a beer and popcorn night to me. Hey, another thing on the radar is the NHL free agency. That's going to make some changes too, because you're going to have some players that used to play for one team are now going to be on, potentially playing on another. And that could, the way I look at that as not being a very educated hockey guy, is that can affect how their performance, right? Their line mates now are different. The strength of the team they play on, that can really change things up for a franchise owner and having that asset as well, right?
Yeah, and maybe even bigger than that is their salary. Their salary is going to change from last season. They have a new contract coming. With COVID, maybe they'll keep the numbers down a little bit from past years, but there's a lot of players that are going to get a raise or potentially take a step back contract-wise. So for the franchises in the UFHL, they're going to be paying close attention to free agency to see, where their player ends up, what their fantasy situation is going to be like, as you mentioned, line mates and deployment. And then mainly, or just as importantly, what's that contract and how does it fit into their salary cap budget for the UFHL? And right now we don't have a free agency element in the UFHL, but certainly we're in the middle of owner meetings throughout October, and a lot of franchises have put forth proposals on how to incorporate free agency into the UFHL. So this time next offseason, we very well could have our own free agency, free agent frenzy within the UFHL, where franchises, if their contracts are expiring, they may be able to walk away from those players and put them up for auction and purchase other free agents through that auction that maybe they prefer for their team, which would allow for a lot more roster turnover, but also roster flexibility if you're not locked into those players regardless of their NHL contract. So when they're up for a new NHL contract, they could essentially be up for a new UFHL contract or end up on a new UFHL franchise. So that's looking a little down the road. It'll depend on how the UFHL owners decide they want to do that, but certainly the ideas are there that could add another element to the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League through free agency in the years to come.
I like wrinkles. Yeah, it makes sense though. You think about it. You get a guy that lands a big contract, that can really mess with your cap, right? You're going to have to look at that, manage that, make some changes. Yeah, that I could see that. I could see guys wanting that.
Yeah, so right now you have to trade your way out of that or do a buyout and take the player off your roster. But most likely you still have the off season. If the next NHL season looks like it's potentially starting January 1st, you'd have between, October 9th, if they sign on the first day of free agency, till January 1st to trade your way out of that contract. But if we implement our own free agency, you could, as of the end of the playoffs, when the season's up, you could walk away from Taylor Hall or Alex Pietrangelo or Torrey Krug, whoever it is that's a big name NHL free agent, and have them auctioned off to the highest bidder, and your franchise would get, a percentage of those proceeds being your former player, and then you'd be out out of the salary cap crunch. You can avoid that the bigger contract coming back, but there's also the risk and the gamble there of walking away from somebody not knowing exactly what that next contract could be, or where they might end up in a more favorable fantasy position too. So if free agency becomes a part of the UFHL in the years to come, it'll be exciting. But right now, you basically have to trade your way out of the contract if you don't like where or how much the player signs for next season.
Right. A lot of moving pieces, a lot of working parts, and a lot of guys need to pay attention to the entry auction. Well, the entry auction is soon to come, but based on the NHL draft, and do their homework. And I know guys will be. So in the meantime, we'll be doing all that. There's I don't know if there's any other important dates we need to talk about. The owners meeting, one already in the bag. We got a couple more coming up. Anything else of note by the time our next podcast comes around?
No, not for the next podcast. Will come around right on the same day that we're doing the draft for the scout draft for rounds 3 to 7 of the NHL draft. And we'll have the results from the entry auction. We'll know what prospects went where and what they sold for, and sort of the interesting any trades, blockbusters that happened on draft day, as there usually is in the NHL for the UFHL entry auction. We'll have lots to talk about there. But like I said, the owner meetings are sort of setting us up for next season, which our official start date for the 2020-21 UFHL sort of campaign year will be November 1st, which the NHL usually starts their next campaign on July 1st, the free agent frenzy, and then the season starts in October. So this way it'll be November 1st, and hopefully we'll have NHL hockey back on the ice January 1st, which is by all accounts, that's the new target date, because it was going to be December 1st. They were talking about literally jumping right into training camp on October 15th. Because remember, some of these franchises in the NHL, the teams that didn't make the playoffs, they haven't played a hockey game, professional hockey game, since March 12th. So, I mean, that's a long time off from your job, your career. So those franchises wanted to get their players back in town, get them in a longer training camp, get them up and running in October. But I think that's all kind of been bumped back about a month just with the COVID and stuff. I think the pandemic, I think they're pushed back a little bit, but by all means, with or without fans, it sounds like the NHL owners and Gary Bettman and the franchises want to drop the puck on New Year's Day. Whether they do a winter classic, an outdoor game on New Year's Day, like the usual tradition, I'm not sure, but certainly, hopefully we'll have the 2020-21 UFHL season also starting on January 1st, which for 10 franchises in the UFHL, that'll be their first fantasy gameplay, because they only joined the fold through the redraft in July, and they didn't make the playoffs. So for a lot of those franchises, they've been having a ton of fun with trades and everything else, and preparing for these drafts and prospect auctions. But that'll be their first chance to see how their team performs when all 31 NHL teams are back on ice. So hopefully November 1st will be the start of our next season, and January 1st is when the puck will drop.
I can't wait. It'll be nice to get those franchises seeing a piece of the action for real in the UFHL, and to be able to see how everything works in all the work we've put and you yourself, Larry, we put into this to make it functional, taking a lot of feedback to make it better. And in all reality, we just want it to work for everyone. That's the ultimate goal. Work for the founders, work for the owners, work for the scouts. The whole league has to be functional, and we just want it to be an astounding success, and we're on our way. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, definitely. I think everything is trending in the right direction. Like I said, you couldn't have asked for a better Klein Cup playoffs. I mean, it went off without a hitch, both in the NHL and the UFHL, but the way it played out, the two best teams met in the final with the most players remaining, and it was a exciting final there. And certainly the offseason has been busy. Like you said, you can't open Twitter without an announcement, a trade announcement, and soon we'll have the entry auction stuff ramping up. So busy off season, and the next NHL season, next UFHL season will hopefully feel like it's right around the corner.
Yeah, well, I think we can probably wrap a bow around this podcast number 8, but I want to congratulate Ashley Murray again. She's probably thinking, oh my God, they talk about me so much, but you know what? We're so ding dang excited, Ashley. Can't wait to see some pictures of the Klein Cup ring, her hand next to Al Murray's hand with the Stanley Cup ring. I think that would be a really cool moment. and who knows, maybe some kind of pseudo Klein Cup parade down the Green Mile in Regina. I don't know how she's going to do it. I'm putting lots of ideas in her head is what I'm doing, but it's it's pretty exciting. So way to go, Ashley. Other than that, I think anything you need to know about Larry's mock draft is out there. I think I saw it on Twitter. It's probably on all the social media. We've got all the questions for the owners' meetings all posted for anybody who wants to look at that. Larry's taking care of that. And we're on all the social media. Of course, you've got the website with anything you need to know. And stay tuned until the next podcast. And I hope everybody has a really amazing Thanksgiving weekend. I'm looking forward to it. Maybe some time off. We can put our minds at ease for at least a weekend would be really nice. And I hope the weather stays warm because we're starting to see a little bit of winter around here, but it would be nice to see some nice warm weather so I can get some stuff done outside, Larry, because I'm not ready for winter yet. I don't know if you are, but you're in Kelowna. You're not going to get it like we are. So looking forward to a really nice Thanksgiving weekend. Thanks, Larry, again for joining me and helping me out with this one. I want to say thank you for everybody tuning in. And remember, UFFS is the place to find UFHL, and this is where you own the game.